the first 30 minutes of your morning, don't pick up your phone. Just leave it be and go do something like meditate or BrainTap. And I know you've had an amazing experience with BrainTap. Do you want to share how it's changed your life?
Yeah, definitely. BrainTap for me is a totally game changer in my life.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today is going to be an exciting conversation. We have the founder of BrainTap, Dr. Patrick Porter here, and the CEO of RMI, Dr. Federico Ugalde. And today we are going to talk about the importance of brain health, how it pertains to longevity, as well as a little bit about stem cells. So let's get started.
Thank you, and welcome, Dr. Porter. I think, the first thing we want to ask you is, what is a little bit about your background and how do you end up founding this amazing company?
Well, I was fortunate. My dad was an alcoholic, which most people can't say that they're fortunate. But for me, my dad got help in a process called the Silva Method, which is a meditation process. And they use something called the Silva sound. So if it was playing in this room or on this recording, you'd hear this weird, bizarre sound they call isochronic tone. And what it does when you hear it, it actually uses deep cortical responses in the brain to synchronize the hemispheres. And it's not like binaural beats. It's actually like our planet. If we go to the mountains, they have a resonant frequency of 7.8 hertz frequency, which happens to be theta. So what Silva did was he did alpha. So think of alpha as neutral to the brain. And most people are stuck in sympathetic, which is high beta. And usually what we find is a correlation between high beta, which is stress and anxiety, and a lot of people know about inflammation. It actually drives inflammation, and it actually will affect the cell wall. So nutrients can't get in and get out. So we're learning so much more about how epigenetics works and how your language changes things. So in Silva, you went to level, and then I was fortunate to be in, I call them God winks, that you're in the right place at the right time, certain things happen. And I met up with a group called Light and Sound Research back in the 80s, and there were 6 of us, and we were building a big machine called the SILS, a sensory input learning system. And you had to do it all by hand. This was before what they call programmable chips. There were no computer monitors. I mean, if you can imagine that, people can't even.
Old school.
Old school. Yeah. People ask me, did I go to school for neurophysiology? I go, there was no neurophysiology.
No such thing.
We did what's called biofeedback. So what we were doing was we were measuring skin temperature, respiration, heart rate, and you could measure all that. And while they were doing that, we were changing light frequency and sound frequency, because we wanted to see what happens. Most people know about a candle, right? You probably meditated at times to a candle or start a candle when you take a relaxing bath. And what we know is that candle or light flickers at 10 hertz. So when you're looking at that candle, your brain is actually mirroring that, because every cell of your body has something called a mirror neuron. So whatever's happening in your external environment and your internal environment is changing your epigenetics. And that changes actually every 40 seconds. Now, we didn't know that back then.
Right.
All we knew was their respiration would improve, their heart rate would lower, their stress level would begin. And we were doing this for pain control. We didn't even know all these other benefits. And then I happened to be the last of the 6 standing. I was a young researcher at that time. And I was the guy basically I was the voice of the MC square. And nobody knew about it. Imagine you have a technology that's so advanced and is so simple to use that nobody understood it. I mean, we won New Gadget of the Year in 1989 at the Consumer Electronics Show in Chicago when it was there. And we had lines for people to use it, but when we sold it, people didn't understand it. And we didn't have downloadable technology like our phones and things like that. So I started a franchise. And that franchise I sold in 2002 because I felt like that wasn't my real calling. I was stuck to a desk, and we had 108 locations. I sold that, and that gave me the money to kind of hang out for 10 years and figure out what I wanted to do. I wouldn't say I was retired because I kept working, but then in 2012, my sister, who was still working for the company, said, "You better get a job," because that gravy train's about to, because I sold it on terms, over time. And then in 2012, I said, what if I could recreate this? And if you go back in time, and there's still images of the MC Square on the internet because people see it. It looks, there was a company in America called Radio Shack. And we used to build these in the back room with parts from Radio Shack. And we would solder the LEDs in the glasses and everything. It was pretty crude. Now at the end, it would look pretty sharp because we were making thousands of them at a time. But it was different components. So think of stereo systems with multiple units stacked on top of each other. And I was able to shrink all that down now to fit into a headset and a visor. And we're still not done with it yet, but we were able to, we can go into detail about what it's doing, but there's 6 different technologies inside the headset, and they all have been validated to work. So what I did was, we call it a symphony of brainwaves, because what we discovered was no one brainwave is super important. It's important that we're able to, like a car, if you have 5 gears in your car and you take 1 gear out of the equation, your car's not going to run as well. The same thing's true with your brain, and we can kind of delve into that because of the science that's now available. It wasn't available back then. We just
Theory, was it theory?
Yeah, it was just theory, and people didn't know what was going on, but we knew there was a benefit there. And for me, my benefit was super learning. And that's what my first book was about. It's called Awaken the Genius. It was an accelerated learning book. And we talked about how when you synchronize the hemispheres, now they have a lot of research they call the Mozart effect. If we played classical music in this room, for instance, we'd all just be smarter because that music's playing. But what we found was with music, like one of the research we did, it's going on right now in Brazil, we did it with over 1,000 students. That music, while you're playing it, will do it. But when you're done playing the music, your brain goes right back to its stress state. When we add the algorithm that we've created over the last 40 years to that same piece of music, it doesn't turn off.
Wow.
It basically stays for 72 hours. So that's the key to training. That's why we call it brainwave optimization. We're training the brain through the way the brain learns, not by forcing it. And I know a lot of people like magnetic resonant therapy, which I think is a valid piece of research and people using it, but we get long-term benefit because we're training the brain to do something it naturally does anyway. So, and it's affordable.
How many, and you can speak to this, you do it every morning, right? How many days do you have to do it in a row in order for your brain to start becoming trained, so to speak?
Well, we say 21 days just because that's kind of the standard out there, although I like to debunk that myth. There's no study ever done on 21 days.
Okay.
What it was there was a study done at Stanford and Harvard simultaneously that showed if you use visualization and relaxation techniques, you can make a personal change in 21 days. If you don't use visualization and relaxation, which you can say is BrainTap, it takes 18 months. But what sounds better, 18 months, or 21 days?
Right.
And so what we find is that we did a study that we did with the National Institute of Health. We provided them the information during COVID. We had to present it over the internet instead of at their conference, which we would hope to. We showed 100 people, 55 to 65 non-meditators, and we improved their brain score by 30% and their physiology by 33%. And then that same score in 30 days became their baseline. Wow. So think in terms of, some people will do something, it's like lifting weights. How long does it take you to go to the gym and feel comfortable lifting instead of sore, next day? The neurons are kind of the same way. So there's 3 different times of the day you do it. Like you said, he does it every morning. The morning sessions are super important because in the morning we need our own norepinephrine, our own dopamine, our own cortisol. And when we drink coffee first thing in the morning or we get up by an alarm clock, that disrupts that pattern, that natural circadian rhythm. So I always tell people that nowadays with the phones and everything we have, set your phone to wake you up to some beautiful music. Don't let that alarm just rock your nervous system.
And don't pick it up. That is the best advice. I think Rudy gave us that. Like the first 30 minutes of your morning, don't pick up your phone. Just leave it be and go do something like meditate or BrainTap. And I know you've had an amazing experience with BrainTap. Do you want to share how it's changed your life?
Yeah, definitely. BrainTap for me is a totally game changer in my life. I do it in the morning and when I go to sleep. We're going to talk a little bit about sleep health. But prior to that, I think one of the things you mentioned is everything that RMI has in the language, right? That is epigenetics, inflammation, cortisol levels. So all of these, we're relating that to our health and to our longevity path. So how important is that? Because now we're measuring the brain, and we always said here in RMI that brain health is one of the key elements for the rest of your body. So I think now one of the coolest thing that I'm seeing is the new testing. So now we can see the brain waves. Now we can measure oral labs with a detail. I think what had changed in the last 15 years is now we know where we're going, right? So it's amazing how your technology is changing a lot of people, and I think sleep health is one of the things we want to talk right now. How with BrainTap can help your sleep, because this is one of the things that I think more than 80% of the people are suffering right now, that they cannot sleep well, they're stressed. So Can you comment a little bit about that?
Exactly right. They say 2/3 of the world isn't sleeping right. So I always tell people, look to your right or to your left. If you're not sleeping right, one of those SOBs are.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but everyone can sleep because, you know, they have a saying, sleep like a baby, right? They're not talking about, you know, crying all night and with a wet diaper. They're talking about, you know, sound sleep and doing that. And the problem is that our environment isn't conducive for sleep anymore. If you think about ancient times, we would meet at the fire. Whether we were hunting or gathering, we'd tell our stories. That fire is flickering at 10 hertz frequency, and it's actually emitting infrared light. So your body's getting a light. It's like biohacking. You know, they would calm down. And then when the logs went out, then you go, you know what? Go pick up some more logs. We're going to binge watch these logs. You know, when the fire goes out, we go to sleep, right? You know, the next show doesn't just roll over and you stay up watching 10 shows on your TV or something like that. So that's key. But the reality is that sleep actually starts in the morning. I tell people, think about getting in a boat and going across the lake, and you want to get directly across the lake, but you're 5 degrees off, and you never course correct because the first step was 5 degrees off. You're going to end up way over here, and you want to end up over here. So in the morning, when the brain is actually always modulating to its environment. So we're used to getting up. In ancient times, we would have gotten up, the earth would have got warm, the sunlight would have hit us, whether we were in the cave or outside, it wouldn't matter. We would wake up with the light of the sun. It would slowly wake up our cells. Every cell of our body has something called a chromophore on it. Think of it as a battery. That battery stores energy in the form of light, sound, and vibration. So, you know, if you're at a party and maybe you didn't want to be there, but they're playing all your songs from your high school.
You're not leaving.
Right, you're not leaving.
You're not leaving.
Pretty soon you start dancing, and your friend who brought you that said, hey, I thought you didn't want to come. You go, you can't help it because once the cells fill up with energy, they have to share that energy. They call that photobiomodulation.
That happened with the Macarena with me.
Exactly.
Like, oh, no.
So when you start the morning off, we actually excite the brain. So it's not a brainwave training you want to do at night because it can actually, your brain is the most powerful pharmacy on earth.
Absolutely.
So if we can release 30,000 different neurochemicals with just a thought, and we're trying to excite it. Then in the afternoon, we have sessions that we showed in a peak performance study with Google and Microsoft users with Julia Arndt. We published a study that showed if these guys could give us 20 minutes in the middle of the day, they got 23% more work done. Their sleep scores, they didn't do it to sleep at night. They only did that one session because we couldn't get them to do anything else. But their sleep score improved 43%. Their happiness score improved 54%. But the one statistic that blew their minds, these were the 1%ers, the people that thought they're the top of their game. We did it also with physiology skills, but we had a questionnaire that they answered about depression. They were all clinically depressed. We improved their depression score 70%.
Wow.
That's amazing. I think, you know, I didn't know about this study, but one of the things that it helped me, it was, you know, lower the stress. So here in RMI, we have a lot of brain taps, and one of the things I encourage the employees to take 10 minutes break and do just 10 minutes break because they definitely will increase their productivity, but also their stress, right? So it's amazing how this is changing so much lives.
When you think about stress, think of your cells, and every cell has piezo energy. So when you get stressed, it's like the cell danger response happens. Even though physiologically you're thinking this, we have something called the psychoimmunity. So your psychology is actually affecting your immune system. So when you're stressed out, you actually downregulate. It seems like it would upregulate, but it doesn't. You upregulate. They did a study during COVID, which most people don't realize that our bodies, as we're sitting here, are emitting 8 to 10 nanometer light. That's why you can see me and I can see you. And they did a study where they showed people that looked at the COVID experience as a threat rather than a challenge. If you looked at it as a challenge, it was much better. But if you looked at it as a threat, you were producing 200 times less light.
Wow.
So if you think about the energy at the cellular level, you were actually smothering the cells because just like when you contract a muscle, the blood can't flow into that area. You got to release that muscle. That's why when you see like the Olympics that are coming up here, you look at the Olympians, they don't even look like they're trying. And they're running the 100-yard dash, you know, at incredible speeds or the quarter mile or whatever. And you're going, they don't look, you know, when you're little, you grit your teeth and you run and you don't realize you have to relax into that success rhythm. And I think that's really what BrainTap does, because when you're sitting there, your body only knows how to respond to that vibration. There's a really cool video on the YouTube that I usually show in a lot of my talks, which is metronomes. They set 300 metronomes out on a table. They started them all at different times. Within 3 minutes, all those metronomes are in sync.
I just watched an Instagram video on that literally this morning. There were
Oh,
5 of them. They
yeah.
did a study, I think, out of UCLA or something, and they were all going different ways, and then just very shortly started syncing.
They do it with grandfather clocks too. So every cell of your body does the same thing. So think of your brain, the master control center of the body. You're exposing it to frequencies of light, sound, and vibration. Now in our ears, we have something called Nogier frequencies. Dr. Nogier, he created something called auricular therapy, which is really acupuncture, but in America, you got to rename everything. But there's auricular points in the ear that correlate to different parts of the body. And my doctors were using lasers to do that. And I thought, well, I know if we can just bathe the ear with light. So a 10 to 20 minute session is worth, the 10-minute session is like 2-minute dose, like a laser treatment because photic energy. But the 20-minute is like 3 to 5 minutes. But it's also dosed with these frequencies. These 7 frequencies, they know that when your body has these in harmony, then we're healthy. But if you're not healthy, he knew that one of these frequencies in the body was out of harmony. So we're giving that dose in the ears. That changes with every session. But the eye lights are using other frequencies because our eyes actually absorb light energy and transmit light energy. You've probably been sitting at watching television or at dinner and you feel somebody's looking at you, turn around and see that they are. That's because our eyes actually transmit more light than the rest of our body.
Wow.
So you're actually feeling, when I was in science class in high school, we built a thing with the sun that would turn a fan. It was just light energy. It was a needle with a black, and they just set it outside and the sun energy was hitting it. It just showed us that there was photic energy coming from the sun. Well, that's coming from us.
Right.
And so we have to recharge that. And most people don't understand how light energy works in the body. We have this mitochondria. When the light energy hits the cell, if it's about to die, it actually has a magnetic attraction toward light energy. It absorbs into the mitochondria, speeds it up, and can increase that energy up to 32 times its natural energy source. So imagine, like here, you get a stem cell treatment. Your body, like I did, I told you I had all this energy.
You did, yeah.
And I've been doing my brain tap in between, but it's like you get all this energy. Now, they are actually using, a lot of stem cell companies are using laser guided stem cells and different things like that. But I know that if you put light energy, because that light energy is causing an interaction with the body. Our body, we are photic in nature. We're light beings at the very essence. So when you think about doing that, now we're also frequencies. Like if you remember when you're a child and you walked in and your parents fighting, you could feel that energy.
And you emit that frequency, right? Like 10 to 12 feet outside of your body.
Yeah, our NIH actually, if you look it up in 1994, actually published a paper saying that we had a biosphere. And I can't believe doctors don't know about it. It's right in the NIH.
Yeah.
And they know that when you're healing, you generate this healing. They know that disease doesn't start in the tissue. In fact, they did a study with mice and they ran mice through a maze. And when they ran through the maze, they started systematically taking the brains out of these poor mice because they want to know, where did these mice carry the memory of the maze? They took the whole brain out of the mice. And the mice, all they had was a brain stem. They could still run the maze.
Wow.
And what they decided was that memories are not stored in the tissue. They're stored in the field. But we need our tissue. Every cell has these receptors, right? And so they're transmitters and receivers. So if we damage the receiver, the transmitter, it's like having a TV. We could have a great looking TV, but if the insides don't work, it doesn't matter.
So picture. Yeah.
So we have to have that transmitter and receiver. And of course, our brain is one of the key things, but every cell is thinking.
Yeah.
So
fascinating.
So in RMI, we are into preventive medicine. We believe that the more we encourage people to do these treatments, plasma exchange, using stem cells to all over your inflammation, you will extend life, but also you probably are going to avoid diseases, right? Do you think with BrainTap, you can avoid mental diseases in the future?
Well, definitely. I think if you do the combination, I mean, when I had the plasma infusion here, I was amazed at what came out of me. I mean, you can't really detox plastics out of you.
No.
And every day we're getting the size of a credit card, into our bodies. So, glass, of course, is best to drink out of and things like that. But we can be fearful or we can do things about it. And what we did is, there's a study right now, it's in Seminole College right now in Florida. but we did our pilot study with a guy named Dr. Kelly Miller. It's in a book now called Saving Your Brain. We published the study, and every person in the study was taken off the dementia scale in 6 weeks.
Wow.
Because
That's
it's all about energy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, if you can bring
the
up the
source.
energy of the body, energy, think of it, ATP is the currency of the body.
Mm-hmm.
So like they say in business, money can solve a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm.
well, energy, that's why when we're younger, we can get away with a lot. Like
Mm-hmm.
I can get away with sleeping 4 hours a night, or maybe staying up all night studying or cramming for an
Mm-hmm.
exam in college, and it doesn't even bother me. I might have one day where I'm not so good, but I'm right back at it. But if I do that today at 62,
You feel it. You feel it.
it's going to be,
Yeah.
oh God, how can I do
Yeah.
that? And I even showed, even flying, people don't understand that. When we do work with a group called TBRX, which is Tom Brady's recovery brand. And he's really big into recovery, right? Because they said, how can you be a quarterback in the professional league at age 44?
Unreal.
And he said, because every 1 minute he spends training physically, he spends 2 minutes in recovery. And so recovery, that's what you do here.
Great message.
Most people never recover.
Actually, the world champion of triathlon, he said, my training is starting on my couch.
Yeah.
You know, that's the main training, because they rest so they can perform at their best when they are training. So it's completely agree on that.
Yeah, everything is kind of cyclic, or if you want to think about it like a spiral, or, you know, kind of orgasmic. You know, you start at this one place and go up, you build up, then you got to have that release. You can't just lift weights and work out. That's why you see these people at the gym and you're wondering, you've been coming here for a year, you haven't changed. You know, you're actually looking bigger, you know, and they're doing all this cardio stuff, and they're not doing any muscle building, and they're not taking a break. You can't, that's why the downside to the American motto, you know, just go after it all, go, everybody wants everything, go, go, go. You got to take some time to reflect. And the other thing is that when you outgrow your mindset, you fail. You fall back down, because you got to be growing your mindset along with everything else. You know, and I can tell you, we were in India just a couple months ago, and it was a great trip, but I got to scan 33 billionaires' brains, and none of them had a brain score over 30.
Meaning?
They're billionaires, being out of 100. So if you can imagine your energy score, mitochondria is 100%. And like, I'm usually 100% when I'm home.
Okay.
And I take a flight like I did to India. It's now 30%. But then a day later, after I did BrainTap, and when I first arrived, and the next morning I'm back to 100%. That's my normal.
And how do you measure that?
With the NeuroCheck. So what we did with these people, because when you're talking, we're just launching India, right? So they want to know, where's the evidence? I said, tell you what, you come prepared, you're the evidence. I'm going to show you, because you can't argue with your own information, right? So we scan these guys, they've made all the money that they need. They want to do something now for the world, but so many people, there's a reason, there's an expression, retire and expire. People spend their whole life building their wealth, and they spend all their wealth trying to keep their health. You know,
100%.
and
We say that all the
you know,
time.
It's the same for
Same
clients.
with us.
You know?
Yeah.
Right.
You work your whole life to accumulate and have all of these things, and then you get to the point where you can enjoy them, and now you've lost your health and you can't enjoy them, right?
So there's technologies like what you have, obviously, and what we have. When you add the two together, if you can get the right, I always tell them, you know, if you're asking God to build a house, you know, the old story of the guy that, there's a story of a guy who's getting ready to retire, says, hey, goes to his boss, he says, you know, I built houses for you my whole life, I'm going to retire. And the guy goes, no, I want you to build one more house. And he talks him into doing it. And he says, okay. So he hires the cheapest labor, gets the cheapest materials, builds it as fast as possible, goes back to the guy and hands him the keys, says, okay, that's my last house, I'm retiring. He goes, no, keep the keys, it's your house.
Joke's on you.
Yeah. He goes, wait a minute, you didn't tell me that was your house. That's what people feel like when they get older. They go, what do you mean I'm going to be living until 80, 90 years old?
Yeah.
You know,
Joke's on you, yeah.
I mean, it used to be life expectancy was what, 60, 70 years old. Now people are easily living to 90 to 100. And, you know, they can live it, you know, with their wits about them, physical health. I mean, I remember my grandpa, when he was my age, the guy wouldn't do anything, and he died at 64.
Yeah.
You know, and I have my boat and I have my grandkids, and I want to be out there playing and having fun with them till whenever. You know,
Purpose, right?
Purpose.
Purpose.
Yeah, I think one of the great things about BrainTap is we know that meditating was something that was beneficial for everyone. The thing is, every time I thought about that, it was like I have to go to the Tibet and go in a monk place and start doing these things. But it was difficult for me that I have, ADHD. So my brain's always working. So for me, BrainTap was a really, really easy way to guide me. And do you want to talk a little bit about how people can start? People who had never meditating.
Sure. In fact, that's even better. We've done, just in the last 5 years to 10 years, I guess you'd say, when we've been using NeuroCheck to measure things in the WABI, we found that most people don't meditate correctly. They're actually doing more stress because of the default mode network. When your monkey mind, they call it, takes over, it's actually stressing out the brain. And we actually show them, we had people wearing glucose monitors, and they're hearing sugar spikes while they're meditating.
Because they're stressed out about trying to meditate.
Right, because the liver, one of the worst things that happens to people is they don't realize your liver houses 24 to 28 grams of sugar. And when you get stressed, it dumps it into the bloodstream. It's like eating a candy bar, but you don't get to enjoy it. And so they're sitting there go, why did I have a stress out there? I was meditating. Because you weren't meditating.
Yeah.
You
were thinking about trying to meditate.
Right. You're thinking about, am I doing it right?
Right.
One thing people tell us about BrainTap, and we can now measure that default mode network, and we have a study going on in India right now where we're showing because last year we were voted Researchers of the Year there because we showed how breath work called pranayama breathing can balance the hemispheres. You can do that 3 times a day, which is a lot of work, or you can do BrainTap for 10 minutes and get the same results. So we were trying to show how ancient traditions and modern technology work together.
It's genius.
And the problem is that when you have to do too much effort, when you get too much of your left brain involved, in other words, people think they can logically, you can't outthink your problems. Your best thinking brought you your problems.
Right.
So we need to have an upgrade to those. And part of that is putting your body into a state of abeyance, which means in a sleepy-like state. Alpha and theta, when we measure brains, those are the 2 brain waves most people don't have, and because they're stressed out. When most people are hanging out in delta, which is amazing. There's a saying, the masses are asleep. Well, I can show you our statistics, and they are. If they're not asleep, they want to be. Most brains are over 60% in delta. And that shows us they have a lot of inflammation, a lot of, and it comes right down to nowadays we've been programmed for fear. And so many people are addicted to, even though they don't want to watch the news, they don't want to hear about the negative stuff, they're addicted to it because they want to have some kind of emotion, some kind of excitement in their life. And the reality is that stuff is going to do whatever it does. You got to take care of yourself. I mean, I'm not saying don't be informed, but do that earlier in the day. When you're talking about sleep, what used to be my parents' addict was, they're no longer alive, but when they were alive, they would watch the news and go to sleep. I'm going,
it's terrible.
that's crazy.
It's terrible. Yeah.
They let the news condition them. And so think about, you probably fallen asleep in front of the TV watching a military movie, and then you find yourself in a dream in the military movie. I tell people it's the same thing with BrainTap. If you listen to positive thinking 100%. Right before you go to sleep, 100%. The brain takes all that positive information and starts to incorporate it into your life. And you start to plan on and expecting, because we get what we expect.
Yep.
We realize those things.
And this has been, researched by Wayne Dyer, Joe Dispenza. There's so many individuals, including yourself, have been researching this, and the data that is coming out. And I was telling Dr. Ugalde about it. It's just phenomenal. And I just learned a ton just sitting here talking to you. I don't know if you did.
Yeah.
It was incredible. It's worth doing and trying and understanding that longevity is a puzzle. Right? This is a puzzle. There's not one silver bullet that fixes everything, but the more pieces of this puzzle that you can pick up, the more optimal your picture. And things like brain health and sleep are so important to that. It's wonderful to have BrainTap available to anybody, right?
Yeah. And I think the most important thing is, you need to relate it on data. So there's a lot of things that, out there, but, companies like BrainTap, that they are backed up on science. I think this is one of the things in RMI that we're always pursuing is everything that we do here is supported by data. So this is the most important thing that people need to know. And for me, also in the world of new wearables that, everybody measure your Oura Ring, your Whoop, your Garmin's, Apple Watch. Yeah. So now you have a path and say, wait, I'm stressed. My heart is not, getting to the right place. My sleep is not good. So now you take action, right? Now you take action. Now you come to RMI and we test you and everything, your labs and everything. But also you can be testing your brain. And that's when BrainTap, comes along, and it's like, we need to actually worried about your brain health as the same as you worry about your metabolic health, your physical weight. So I think is an amazing combination of companies, and we're really, really glad to have you here.
Yes.
Well, one thing for people to understand is that all the evidence says there's no time to start too early. I mean, because they're finding dementia in people who are 27 years old now.
Wow.
I mean, and the problem is because of our diets and in their lifestyle, it's really working against us, you know, and environmental toxins and all these things. So there's no time like now. You don't have to have a breakdown to have a breakthrough.
No,
You know?
yeah, for preventative medicine needs to start now. There is no time like the present to begin.
And the stress of the kids right now with social
alternative
media
medicine.
pressure and all this stuff, you know, we're going to see more stress. I think I saw a reel you talking about autism. Did you have tested on?
Yeah, we've studied. What we find is the autism brain and like the dementia brain. If you saw their brain scans, to us they look very similar. And the only difference is that sometimes in the dementia they don't have any theta as well. But most of the time, if you think of an autistic child when they're stimming, you know, when they're shaking and quaking, that means they have high beta with no alpha. And when they're disassociated, like they go, oh, Bob's in a mood, or Betty's in a mood, she's not out of it. Well, the reality is that they can't, because our brain works kind of analog. Think of an analog clock where we're watching the second hand, not digital. We can't just jump from beta to delta. We have to go through the sweep. That's why they have a sleep cycle. You know, we're going through the sleep cycle, and we're always cycling. You know, that's why it's so important that we get up away from our desks sometimes and walk. And sitting is, they say that 20 minutes of sitting is equivalent to smoking a cigarette now.
Wow.
So when you think about that, you know, getting up and moving, because our brain needs oxygen and movement. And also they have it, I mean, of course, the chemical toxins that mom has when, you know, they even took it down to even if you have silver fillings, you know, that the baby is going to have some effect. They're going to have mercury poisoning just because the mom has it. So, I mean, and that can be 3 generations. So it's not just, you know, we have all these problems that are facing us, and, you know, technology like what you have here and what we're doing, technology is going to help us because technology kind of got us in this trouble. Right now, people are making a lot of money selling foods that are killing us, environments that are killing us, pop-up homes that are killing us.
Pharmaceuticals that are killing us.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, pharmaceuticals are mostly junk. I mean, it's just like everything else. There's mystery stuff in there to fill up the tablet.
That's a whole other podcast for a whole other day.
Yeah, I'm not a big believer. I think that you know, most people don't know SSRIs, which most people are on. They're only approved for 14 days of use.
I believe it.
We did a study in Brazil with opioids, and we showed that if you used BrainTap at the same time as you started your opioid use, because we had a group that used opioids and a group that used opioids with BrainTap, they're only approved for 4 weeks of use. That's it. So, but nobody ever stops them at 4 weeks.
No.
They just keep going. What we showed is every person in the study that was using BrainTap at the same time stopped in 4 weeks. Because if you have the skill with the pill, you can stop. Just like SSRIs, if they need to get over some little difficulty, if you're having some kind of chronic depression or something like that and you can't get over it, for 14 days you should be over it because your nervous system changes every 72 hours.
Interesting.
So they're basically what happens, what we found, especially with the autistic kids, is when they were on their medication, they would be manageable, but their brain would never change. So we had to work with their doctor to get them off their medication slowly so we could get their brain to change, because the brain think of the brain as the energy hog of the system. It uses 25% of all resources. So if it can offload some work, it does it, because that's how it's going to preserve it. So if you're giving it an SSRI for mood elevation, you know, our body wants its own serotonin, not the one it's holding in. I tell people it's like having milk in the refrigerator for 2 weeks. Who cares? Nobody wants to drink the 2-week-old milk. They want to drink the fresh milk, you know, if that's what they're going to drink.
Going to the root, right? And that's something that is part of our mission and our stance as well, addressing the root cause of what is causing aging to accelerate or brain health to accelerate or whatever the case is, right? So going to the root cause, not just treating a symptom, so to speak.
So we have a BrainTap here, so Dr. Porter can explain a little bit about the device. You know, is this device, it has headsets, and so you go through the technology.
Okay, so we have the visor that can be adjusted, so when they wear it, and these are the eye lights. When you're actually plugged into the app, which could be anything from an Android to an Apple product, as long as it's using one of the apps, there's 4 LED lights, your eyes are closed, and it's working with the optic nerve And so what's happening is the flash is working. What we find during meditation is, one of the things we talked about the monkey mind earlier, is that when you don't have the lights, 30% of your brain will go to sleep. So that's why they go into fear, because their body thinks it's going to sleep, but they're staying awake. And so this one, it keeps the brain active and gives you energy to meditate. Most people don't realize yoga was invented to keep the brain awake during meditation. And the most important part of yoga is not all the stretching and all the breathing. It's the last part. In India, they'll tell you the corpse pose is the most important one for neuroplasticity and getting the brain work done. So laying down afterwards. Now, the ear lights that I was talking about earlier, the red and blue lights, this happens to be a dose of 20 minutes dose is like a 3-minute dose of a laser. So the photic energy, all the blood in your body goes through your ears every 3 to 4 minutes.
So don't use AirPods.
Yeah.
Defeats the purpose.
Yeah. You don't have the headset, use whatever headphones you want. But you don't really want to expose yourself to too much. This does have Bluetooth. And what we find is there's no EMF with this at all, even when using Bluetooth.
Fantastic.
Because the blue light will actually cancel that out. If you have an EMF meter, you can check it. Every session is encoded. The eye lights will change. This is if you and I were on Dana's spaceship coming to Earth, and we were to look at Earth in the viewfinder and look at the frequencies, they would be between 0.5 and 100. Wherever we're at the planet. So if there's a storm going on, like a volcano eruption, it might be at 80 to 90. That's high gamma, but it tells our body to get out of there. If you remember the tsunami that happened, you look at the videos, there's no animals there because they were in tune with the planet and they left. Where the people are running out after the wave because they're not grounded and they're not in tune with the frequencies. So we change the frequencies to train the brain to get, depending upon what you want to accomplish. Like in the morning, those are what's called SMR. In the evening, they're delta. During the rest of the day, they're theta or alpha, whatever you're doing. So this is all synchronized. What's happening in the ears, there's actually a sound coming through. So if you're just using the app without this headset, you can still get a result.
Sure.
I mean, our sleep study we did in Australia with coal miners in eastern Australia. These were people, because people were saying the blue lights might affect the circadian rhythm. Well, these were people who had no circadian rhythm. They worked in the dark, they left in the dark, they were terrible.
Coal miners,
Yeah, and what we showed them was a lot of people have a mistake about sleep. They think it's time in bed. We did a 2-week washout before and a 2-week washout after the study. The 2 weeks before, the average coal miner got 10 hours of sleep a night, but they only got 1 minute of deep sleep on average.
Wow.
That means they weren't even sleeping. They were laying in bed. We need at least an hour of deep sleep and 2 hours of REM sleep. REM to organize our day and all the memories and get the cognitive function, and the deep sleep to open up our brain, something called the glial lymphatic system, which they just found out about in 2015. Imagine that, these bodies, we've had books, physiology books, since whenever, and they didn't even know. Every book in physiology will stop the lymph system right here before 2015. In 2015, they realized that during level 4 sleep, this new system of the body that's always been there. So what else do we have in our body that we don't even know about? But it was activated during sleep. So what we see is at night, we're going to take them, the lights are going to slowly slow down and drop you off in delta. Like when you're listening at night, it just puts you right in delta. And then the brain will go through its natural cycle. The quicker we can get you to the first cycle of sleep, the more deep sleep you'll have. And the study showed a 70% improvement in the first 3 weeks with the people using the headset. And the people using the app, it took about 6 weeks. So, you can do it either way, but the headset definitely is a game changer. And that's what makes BrainTap, we were the first people to do this in the 80s. And now, of course, there's a lot of people doing different things with frequencies because they now know everything is frequency, right? I mean, Nikola Tesla talked about it, and everybody's using that quote that if you want to know the secrets of the universe, go look at frequencies. So this is what's going on. And so we create little processes like this that people can use at home. The nice thing about the BrainTap is, of course, using it here at the clinic, but it's affordable enough that people coming from outside of the area can take one home with them.
Absolutely.
And continue to do the work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's why we want to promote it, because I think the brain health is totally tied to longevity. So
100%.
Well, it doesn't matter if you have a great body, but you don't have a brain, nobody wants that.
Yeah.
You will get
Across the board.
you will get a brain improvement just by doing what you're doing because the cells will go where they're needed, right? They're intelligent, they're seeking out. But if your body's so bad and so inflamed, one thing we know is with the light, it's going to bypass the critical factor of having to digest and metabolize to make energy. It goes right in, and that cell will just absorb that light energy and start to use it.
Actually, I introduced BrainTap to my therapist, and she actually, when somebody comes to therapy really stressed, she put them in BrainTap for 10 minutes, and then they start the session. So for me, it's amazing how it's helping people, because again, just teaching them how to go to meditation without, with a guide, is totally more easy than do it by yourself. So
Well, it definitely makes a difference in my life. I know when I use it, it makes a huge difference in how I function throughout my day, my stress levels. I mean, my energy right now is nice and chill. Usually I'm bouncing off the wall, so kudos.
Say just press play to change. You don't have to. One thing is that when you
Lay
have to go to a guru and learn breathing techniques, and we do have breath techniques on BrainTap as well, but we're guiding you through the process. And most people, when you're just left up to your own thinking, you're going to get the same thinking. We're just recycling it. We need to get new thinking in there, especially like when they get treatments like you get here. You're getting a new lease. You're like when you get 125 million stem cells put in your body, you want to make sure that your thinking is in line so that your body can accept that new treatment
100%.
and own it instead of going back and sabotaging. Because if you don't expand your mindset, you'll just sabotage yourself.
what you're saying is 100% clear. If we don't prepare your body to receive the stem cell treatment, they will just go into your system, and it's a dirty system. The cells will not last a lot. They will start reducing your inflammation, but it's not the optimal. Instead of we clean up with plasma exchange, we give you some other medications, and then your body is completely ready to receive the cells. So this is one of the key things we need to start looking at is let's clean your body, let's prepare to receive treatment. I think the same thing is with BrainTap, it prepares you to get into deeper states, and then you see the result by itself.
There's just so much alignment with what we do and with what you do at BrainTap. I'm really looking forward to the doctors being trained on BrainTap so we can start using it on our patients while they are receiving treatment simultaneously, and then we can really see some data and how it works together in tangent.
Yeah, and also it's really exciting because we're working for the future in a cognitive protocol, so we can put exosomes and stem cells in certain part of the brain. So it will be really, really cool in the future to see how we combine technologies together.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Port, for being here. And I think it's not going to be our first podcast. I think we're going to keep collaborating together. So thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.